Well, it's been good to be with you again this evening for our last presentation. Also, we'll have an opportunity at the end of this presentation for questions and answers. And today we're going to be particularly talking about one, or it'll actually be several, but I'm going to be emphasizing one of the most misunderstood categories of causes of mental health issues, and it can also be a cause of memory issues when you get older, and that is particularly the area of nutrition. We were the first ones to publish in a peer-reviewed literature an exhaustive review of the medical literature talking about the causes of depression and anxiety. We published this a number of years ago. It was originally published 2015 in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine. Lifestyle medicine is actually a relatively new specialty, and you can actually get fellowship trained in lifestyle medicine. This is the intervention in the treatment of disease using lifestyle approaches. Sometimes people credit me with writing the first textbook in lifestyle medicine. I don't know how many of you have seen the textbook Proof Positive. I know someone here has, because they wanted me to sign their edition of Proof Positive, and they brought it here. But that book has actually been totally republished, new chapters just in September of last year. And maybe my son will bring one or two of those copies tonight. But lifestyle medicine helps in so many conditions. And in the journal, we went through the over 100 causes of depression and anxiety, categorized them into 10 categories, and then did a statistical analysis of it, and found that the brain is pretty resilient. It can undergo 1 or 2 or 3 categories of causes. But once that fourth category of cause hits, you are going to suffer from a diagnosable mental illness condition. It may be depression, it may be anxiety, it might be bipolar disorder, it might be a particular phobia, it might be PTSD, it might be OCD, it might be panic disorder. And in order for that to get better, we are going to have to address those underlying causes and bring them at least under 3. The quicker we can bring them down to between 3 and 1, the quicker the person will actually get better, and that doesn't have to be a lifelong disease. They can actually be cured from the disease. You're going to learn more about that tomorrow if you go through the training, and how to be able to coach people through these 10 categories of causes. And so the first category, when we first elucidated this, there's obviously a genetic predisposition to depression. It tends to run in families. Anxiety can run in families. OCD, particularly obsessive compulsive disorder, can run in families. And we used to state that genetics is what you're born with, and that's only a single cause. And so if we can get you to take care of the other causes, because we can't reverse your genetics, you'll still be okay because of that leeway of having up to 1 to 3 causes before depression occurs. But interestingly, now we can actually do something about your genetic mutations through the field of epigenetics. And this is one of the reasons why nutrition and lifestyle is more important than ever before in human history. It has to do with we have more genetic mutations than ever before in human history. And by the way, I mentioned that professor earlier today. He's actually written a book. It's called his name is John Sanford, and it's called Genetic Entropy. Genetic entropy. Entropy is where things become more disorderly over time. they actually begin to deteriorate. And he was the one that discovered that, of course, we now know that Darwin was wrong about over 90% of the stuff that he wrote about in his Origin of Species. Well proven scientifically, he's been wrong. I still can't figure out why he's considered a scientific hero in so many of our public universities. I mean, he was right about what we call microevolution, or these are kind of changes within species and things like that that can occur over time. And of course, that's just due to reproduction and those sorts of things, because you are not identical to your parents genetically. You're kind of a mixture between those, and our whole world is based on that reproductive aspect of things. Even plants aren't identical to their mother and father plant. There's little variations in there, and of course variations can be expressed depending on the environment, etc. And so he was right about a few things, but he was very wrong about a lot of things, and particularly taking that little excerpt of microevolution and then making the huge assumption that we actually came from bacteria or primordial slime or things like that, and somehow got into this world was just kind of randomly produced as a result of natural selection. And by the way, another way of saying natural selection is survival of the fittest. And he was actually right about some things of survival of the fittest. That's one of the reasons why we teach health at Weimar University, because if you are healthier, you are going to survive longer. There is going to be survival of the fittest. But unfortunately, many people don't realize, some people have, there have been books written about it, it's actually because Hitler believed so much of what Darwin did that he began to play around with the species to try to produce this superior race, and actually started to try to wipe out races that he thought were a problem for humanity and inferior. And this whole aspect of the cruel aspect of what occurred in Nazi Germany actually has its origin in Darwin. So when we start believing Darwin to that degree, it's a very dangerous thing. So that's a parenthetical statement. I wasn't actually planning on speaking on that aspect of things, but it's fresh in my mind because we just had a forum speaking of the science of creation. And unfortunately, there are people even among Christians who believe in macroevolution. It actually doesn't correspond to the Bible. The macroevolution only occurs as a result of death. And if humans came about far later on the line as a result of all of these deaths, then it's not sin that caused death. It's God who actually caused death, because that was the way he created things. And so it disrupts so many things in regards to Scripture. And this is why many young people lose their way when they go to universities and hear about macroevolution. They think that professor's smarter than them. It takes a lot of faith to believe in that, by the way. But they believe that professor's smarter than them, and so they have to be smart and believe in that too, and then they start losing their faith in many of our schools. But anyways, back to genetics. Even though your kids look better than you, it's not because they have better genes. It's because they're younger. And no matter how healthy you are, you have passed along 150 more genetic mutations than what you have to your offspring. If you're unhealthy at the time of reproduction, I mean, you have to be healthy enough to reproduce, but you don't have to be perfectly healthy. And if you are unhealthy at the time of reproduction, you're passing along about 300 new genetic mutations. And this is why John Sanford accurately states, you hear in the world about all of this, quotes, horrors that are going to occur if we don't, quotes, correct climate change over a few degrees Celsius that have occurred. The much more serious problem is the problem of genetic entropy. And John Sanford states that if this world continues just another 100+ generations, that humanity will not actually be healthy enough and live long enough to be able to reproduce. And so humanity is going to be wiped out as a result of genetic entropy. But what Sanford may not have completely understood, he's probably understanding it more, is the fact that these genetic mutations don't have to be expressed. In other words, if you are healthy, for instance, the gene for diabetes, type 2 diabetes, yes, genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. And you can have the bad genes for type 2 diabetes and never develop it if you are on a very healthy program, if you don't get overweight, if you continue to exercise, if you're not eating excess calories or excess fat or excess sugar. We can see that diabetes gene, and we can see this 95-year-old man never developed it because he stayed healthy for life. And so New Start principles are more important. The New Start, for those of you that may not be familiar with it, is an acronym. It's actually trademarked by Weimar, but let me just review it. What does the N stand for? Nutrition. The E, exercise. The W, water. The S, sunlight. The T, temperance. The A, air. R, rest. And T, trust. And so those are the 8 primary natural remedies that are very important in intervening in the treatment of disease and even preventing our bad genetic mutations from being expressed. So what we will do when someone comes to our residential program is we're actually looking at the genetic mutations they have that are being expressed. And so this is sophisticated lab work. This isn't lab work that you get done at your physician's office. This is lab work that has to be specially handled. Some of it has to be frozen. As soon as it's gotten, the whole blood will be frozen. Even the urine will have to be frozen on dry ice until it's carried to the epigenetic laboratories. And so when we get this back, it takes about a week from the program. When we get this back, people are amazed as we begin to describe their personalities just based on the lab work that has come back. This is how you have a tendency to think. You have a tendency to be very obsessive. You ruminate about things. In other words, when things happen, you think about it over and over again. Can't seem to let it go. We will see all of this in the lab work. And then we will see in the lab work people that are naturally empathetic. So you're the type of person that will, when you're cutting your lawn, you will actually see that your neighbor's lawn needs to be cut, and without asking him, you'll just go cut your neighbor's lawn because you feel bad that he has to do that and you're out there cutting it. And the person will say, I have done that many times and people ridicule me, and I didn't realize it was actually in the gene itself. So some people are more empathetic, more naturally empathetic than others, just based on having maybe better genes than others as well, and not having mutated genes in those particular areas, etc. And so one of the most common is undermethylation. And undermethylation tends to come with the addictive gene as well. This is the gene that's associated, for instance, with alcoholism. And it's also associated with other addictions. Yesterday, I don't know if I talked about Did I talk about the girl that had been to 10 different alcohol rehab places last night? No, I didn't talk about her. She's a local. She's from Auburn, California. And she was in her late 20s by now, and she had been to 10 different inpatient alcohol rehab treatment centers. The last one that she was at, she was there for 4 months. It cost her parents $100,000. And it was a very famous one. It was thought to be the best alcohol rehab in the country. She got out of there, she was clean for 4 months, and then she went back to it again. And her parents had means, and they didn't know what to do, but then she found out about Weimar due to TCI in the area. TCI is total community involvement, so she met some of our students. She found out that Weimar has a treatment program for mental health and also for addictions, and so she decided she'd come up and check it out, and she asked her parents, "I want to go to Weimar." And they said, "How much is it?" And she said, "A little less than $10,000. And they said, "How long is it?" And she says, 10 days. And they said, "No way are you going there. You couldn't get better with 4 months with the best rehab in the country for $100,000. $10,000 in 10 days? No way are you going there." And she continued to beg, and she brought her parents up because they were close by to actually look at it. And they realized she had a desire, and they didn't want to be guilty of saying no to the thing that might actually work. And so they said, "Okay, only 10 days, and that's all we're doing." Well, we found out she was an undermethylator. She had that serious gene for alcoholism. And we put her on a combination of a tablet that has SAMe and saffron. Now, and many people that are on these addictions, whether you have a food addiction or whatever, often they are self-medicating. Let me see if I can fast forward to this slide here. This is a study that was just published last year in the peer-reviewed journal called Psychological Medicine. And so it's a comparative efficacy and tolerability of, notice, what does it say? Nutraceuticals. So what is a nutraceutical? A nutraceutical is something that you can't patent. Why can't you patent it? If you send in saying, "I want to patent saffron," what's the US government going to say when you apply for that patent? You're going to get a nice letter back, but it will say it's already in nature. In other words, it's already present. You're not coming up with anything new. This is part of nature. And so what has happened in our scientific world is that many physicians, many top scientists ridicule nutrition and lifestyle medicine because you don't have randomized, double-blinded, controlled trials. Now, in the pharmaceutical industry, before you release a drug that is a foreign drug to the public, you better have randomized placebo-controlled trials. Why? It's a foreign substance. Yes, it might have an effect, but what are the side effects? Are the side effects actually going to be worse than the actual effects? And in some people they are. That's why you can't just buy these drugs over the counter. You have to have a physician that looks at your condition and say, "Well, I think in your case, the benefits probably outweigh the risks, and so let's give this a try. But you better come see me again." He doesn't just prescribe it and tell you to go home, because he's going to be monitoring for some of those bad effects that foreign substance produces. But there is a field of medicine that is somewhat marginalized by some of the top scientists called epidemiology. Epidemiology can tell us with a high degree of certainty that something is effective without doing a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. For instance, Harvard University found out that if you eat blueberries once a week, that you will significantly reduce your risk of ever getting dementia. If you eat strawberries twice a week, you will decrease your risk of getting dementia. And guess what? Those things also help in recovery from depression. But the physician who is the purist is saying, where is the double-blinded, randomized, placebo-controlled trial? But when they ask that question, sometimes they're ignorant over the fact that it cannot be done. How can you produce a placebo that looks like a blueberry, tastes like a blueberry, has the consistency of blueberry, and it's not a blueberry? That's what a placebo is. And they'll also ridicule physical exercise. Exercise, for instance, has been shown to be equivalent. When you become physically fit, it's actually as good as Zoloft for depression. But then some will say, well, Zoloft is a little more certain because you have the randomized placebo-controlled trial. Where is the randomized placebo-controlled trial for exercise? They'll say, how can you fool someone into thinking they're exercising when they're not? And so how can you develop a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial for exercise? And so they raise a standard that's supposed to be there for pharmaceuticals. And yes, we understand why it's there for pharmaceuticals. And they say that everything that you are recommending should be held to that same standard, despite the fact that it cannot be done. And so the field of epidemiology helps us to determine things like this. And so we know that a lot of these lifestyle principles will help in intervening for depression, anxiety, and mental health disorders. But now people have taken the active ingredients in blueberries, for instance, active ingredients that we think are most likely related to the improvement, and you can't patent it, but you can still put it in a capsule. And once you put it in a capsule, you can have a capsule just like that doesn't have that in there, and then you can do a randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trial on nutraceuticals. And so, I know you're probably not going to be able to read this. To date, there have been 192 trials involving 17,437 patients and 44 nutraceuticals that were eligible for inclusion. So these are randomized, placebo-controlled trials on nutraceuticals. And they have found out they work quite well. In fact, many times they're used in addition to an antidepressant. But in this particular review analysis, they found out there were 4 nutraceutical monotherapies demonstrated superior efficacy to antidepressant therapy. So 4 were better than any antidepressants that they could find, and their side effects were the same as placebo, meaning that they didn't have the side effects that all of these other drugs had. Now I'm going to name 2 out of the 4. We weren't surprised at all because we had seen this effect in our programs repeatedly. But 2 out of the 4 that are better than any antidepressants on the market are S-adenosylmethionine and saffron. And we had actually put them together in the same pill. Now, this isn't something that we give to everybody that comes to our program because not everybody is an undermethylator. It turns out it's not going to really help you if you're methylating okay. But it still helps you better than antidepressants do, across the board, which shows you how powerful the efficacy can be. So in her case, we found out she was an undermethylator. We put her on the mood supplement. And of course, it wasn't just that. We weren't just dealing with her genetics. We also helped her out in regards to other hits that she had active, significant hits. And then we also helped out with her frontal lobe enhancement. That's a whole nother category. Frontal lobe hits, when your frontal lobe is not working right because of some lifestyle things that you're doing to yourself in regards to frontal lobe. So it wasn't just the alcohol that was suppressing her frontal lobe. There were other things that were suppressing her frontal lobe. And in 10 days, she recovered from her alcoholism. That was 4 years ago. She is not drinking. She's now been wise enough to marry a good man. She has 2 small children. And in 10 days was accomplished something far less expensive than 10 different inpatient alcohol rehab programs. And so this is what can happen when we start understanding genetics and epigenetics, as well as dealing with the other causes that are present. So, by the way, SAMe has 115 randomized controlled trials. Shows that it's helpful in treating depression, and it can even improve the effects of antidepressants if you're already on them. It can improve sexual function. All of those other antidepressants decrease sexual function. They cause weight gain. There's no tolerance developed, unlike the other antidepressants. And it helps memory. It helps osteoarthritis. In fact, you can regain cartilage from SAMe. It helps fibromyalgia, and it also helps Parkinson's disease. When you see something natural helping a lot of different things, you realize you're getting to a core issue here in regards to what the genetic mutations of mankind have actually done. Saffron is an expensive herb. Both SAMe and saffron are very expensive. They're difficult to produce and to extract and purify. Does anyone know what part of that flower is the saffron? It is actually the red. And so that red, we call that the crocus, the saffron crocus, and it's also the, it starts with a G. I'm blanking on its name right now as well. But there have been 7 randomized controlled trials on saffron. Saffron was as effective as fluoxetine. This is a commonly used antidepressant, also called Prozac. But it improves memory in premenstrual syndrome. Takes 4 to 6 weeks for maximum effect. And saffron 30 milligrams daily, which isn't a lot, was equivalent to Prozac 20 milligrams. But again, no sexual side effects with the saffron. It improves premenstrual dysphoric disorder. This is where women have more irritability and depression before their period. Even smelling it helps. And another study showed it worked as well as the leading drug in treating Alzheimer's without the side effects. What was the leading drug? It's Aricept or donazepam, which virtually everyone that has dementia diagnosis is tried on. That can have some side effects that are unwanted, but you don't have the side effects from it, and the mini mental status exam score went up higher taking the saffron than it did the Aricept. And it also seems to inhibit beta protein or beta amyloid protein. This is what the plaques that get deposited in the brain in Alzheimer's. And so there's a lot of other genetic mutations that we could talk about, but I might just bring up Jared a little bit. We were talking a little bit more after dinner today. And Jared, how many of these antidepressants had you tried before coming to our program?
All of them, I think. A to Z, Abilify to, what's the
Zoloft.
Zoloft. I've taken them all, pretty much. And I'll tell you what, to be honest with you, I would feel better for a little bit, a short period of time, maybe a few weeks. But then I would need to go right back to the doctor to get the dose increased, add on medications. And over time, it just left me wanting. There was one medication that I took right before I went to meet Dr. Nedley. It was called mirtazapine. And in 6 months that I was on mirtazapine, I gained 57 pounds because I could not stop eating. Now, we all know what sleepwalking is, but I developed a condition called sleep eating, where this mirtazapine would somehow not let me know that I would wake up in the middle of the night, go have a full meal, and then I would find out about it the next morning when I would wake up in bed with food all over my face and my pillow. So it's one of the side effects that most people don't, really think about. But the 57 pounds I gained in 6 months was pretty defeating to me because I already had severe anxiety and depression, and now I am obese by the time I saw Dr. Nedley.
So I'd have to go back to your record. Did we find any genetic predispositions?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
And how did we deal with those?
Through nutrition. So I had a conversation with my pastor at the time before I went to see Dr. Nedley. And I remember, I remember telling him 2 specific things. I will never not be addicted and taking something to self-medicate, and I will never be on a whole food plant-based diet. I grew up on a farm, we hunted, we fished, we had a barbecue restaurant. I was not grown up in the Advent faith. So after 15 years, you've heard a little bit of my story, after 15 years of trying so many things and failing, right before I went to Dr. Nedley, I said there's absolutely no way I'm giving up my diet. However, once I came to the program and became educated on what that type of food was doing to my brain, and after experiencing a whole food plant-based diet for just 5 to 6 days, I began to feel dramatically better, and I've never looked back.
So does that mean you're whole food plant-based now?
100%. Yeah, and I get picked on. I get picked on a lot, but you know what? That is, I welcome it, and I love it when I get picked on now because it is an opportunity to share my story. And I welcome being ostracized because ignorance is often lack of education. And it gives me the opportunity, whether I'm in an airport, whether I am, when I go back home to meet my family who still works in that barbecue restaurant, they give me such a hard time, but they also say, but there's something different about you. You're sober, you're happy, and you look better at 43 than you did at 25. So I think the results speak for themselves. So education is critical, and we're going to talk a lot about the educational and coaching component tomorrow morning for those who can come to the training.
All right. Thank you, Jared. I may bring you up on some of these others as well. So a little bit about how the foreign substances work. A lot of people are not aware of this, but let's see, I may pick this up so I can go up here and do some pointing. I don't think does my arrow work here? Oh yeah, it does work. So let me just do the arrow. So the most common drug that's used to treat depression is called an SSRI. Prozac is in that category, Zoloft is in that category, sertraline, Lexapro, citalopram, S-citalopram, paroxetine, which is Paxil, and there's a number of them, even Cymbalta or duloxetine or Effexor, Pristiq. These have SSRI components to them. Some of them are also SNRIs, like Cymbalta and Effexor, where they are doing the same thing but with norepinephrine reuptake in channels. And so SSRIs actually stand for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So back to this story, and I think you also may have been an undermethylator with all those addictions. Yeah, so this is where Jared was as well. 38% of people that come to our program actually have this gene, and we can measure it and show that it's very active. And then we can actually treat it the way Jared was talking about treating it, and 6 weeks later we can remeasure it and find out that you are completely normal, like someone who doesn't have that bad gene. So it can be totally corrected, and if it's not totally corrected, then we will adjust what we are doing nutritionally and supplement-wise, and then remeasure it again to get that under control. So many times, particularly, how would we know if it's a serotonin issue, or at least not know, but it goes along with it? If the person has irritability issues, particularly if it's not just depression, but anxiety. Panic disorder often has lack of serotonin in the brain. So if the serotonin is lacking, the drug companies can't give you anything that helps you make more serotonin. There are certain foreign substances that can help you with that, but the side effect profile is terrible, and nobody will take it. And so they actually will try to get you to have more serotonin synaptic activity by giving you an SSRI. Now, those drugs do not increase your serotonin production. They also don't increase your serotonin receptors. So how are they working? The doctor hands it to you and says, this is going to help your serotonin. So in the normal aspects, so serotonin are these little green things here. These green things, it takes 1 million ATP molecules to make one of those green things. Okay, thank you. So to make one serotonin molecule, it takes 1 million ATP molecules. That's a lot of brain energy to make that. And so then they get put into vesicles, like here, and then the vesicles move to the membrane here, and then when an electrical synapse occurs, serotonin is then bound to a receptor, and as soon as the receptor binds it, another electrical transmission occurs. So this is how communication occurs in the brain. And notice that serotonin molecule is vacuumed back up into the neuron. Why is it vacuumed back up? So it can be used again, and to save energy, to recycle. Exactly right. It is there so that you don't have to spend another 1 million ATP molecules making another one, because the body wants to be pretty efficient. By the way, you have to have your brain make serotonin. You can't get IV serotonin and have it work. Why? Because serotonin is too large to cross the blood-brain barrier. Let me explain a little bit about the blood-brain barrier. When your arteries go into your brain, it's very different than the arteries in any other portion of your body. They're almost like steel pipes. Why are they like steel pipes? Because large molecules can be toxic to the brain and destroy brain cells. And so the oldest cells in your body are in your brain. The cells that were there as a fetus when you were just being formed are still there. And these cells can't be regenerated per se. So we have this skull to protect our brain from trauma, but we also have the blood-brain barrier to protect it, and serotonin is too large to cross this. So is dopamine. This is why you can, in ICU, I think I talked to an ICU nurse here today, and I was talking about the mental health patients of ICU, but they'll put people on dopamine drips in the ICU, and it doesn't help their mental health because dopamine is too large to cross the blood-brain barrier. So what does that mean? We have to get the nutrients in the brain for it to be able to make it, to have that manufacturing plant make it. And so this is why the brain is pretty specific on saving these things. and so we don't have to spend all that brain energy. But how does the SSRI work? The SSRI actually looks like serotonin, but it has a big tail on it, and that tail blocks the reuptake channel. So, what was the question? Exactly. So it blocks the reuptake channel there. What does that mean? Notice how much more serotonin is in that synapse because it can't get back. It can only go one way. And it binds onto those receptors, but it can't go back the other way. Short-term gain, long-term problem. And so this is why those medicines can work for a while, but pretty soon they're going to quit working. Just like Jared mentioned, they worked for a while, but then they didn't work. And of course, then the doctor has to increase the dose, and then he has to use another one. And pretty soon patients are coming to our program, 4 and 5 different antidepressants, still severely depressed. These drugs were never made to be a long-term solution to depression and anxiety. Now, as a doctor, I might prescribe them as well. I hardly ever have to, but I might prescribe them in certain conditions in order to get enough serotonin activity for the person to maybe have a little better self-control until we fix the underlying causes that are there. So if you're on them for 6 months, if you're on them for a year, it's not too much of an issue, but when you're on them for 2 years, there's things that make it a whole lot tougher to be able to recover. And this is why a lot of people, after 2 years, find out that even what they're doing at home can't necessarily solve it, and that's why they come to our program. You know, Jared, 15 years of dealing with this. If it's just the first 2 years, maybe go to the community program that you'll be putting on in this church. Or you could still go and learn some things to help take care of those other hits. But this is why people also have this brain fog as well, because now their serotonin is much less, and so these drugs actually cause a depletion of the very substance they're trying to treat. And Dr. Whitaker from Temple University has eloquently described this. He says that when antidepressants are put in any community, rates of depression within a year start to go up dramatically. And so we need, and this is why even the best researchers in depression and anxiety are saying we cannot medicate ourselves out of this condition. More drugs are not the solution. We have to come up with better solutions. So SAMe and saffron get to the root of it, because SAMe helps you to methylate. It's called S-adenosylmethionine. So it's going to provide the methyl group so that we can make serotonin, and we can fix the primary problem, which might be a shortage of serotonin. There are certain things like exercise that can build up the receptors. Zinc also has been shown to be able to build up the receptors. And so there's things that we can do to fix this defect that are far more natural, far more simpler, and where you don't develop a tolerance, and it's pretty amazing the effect that occurs. So let me go into some of these other categories. Number 2 category is adverse childhood experiences. Let's see if we can. These, of course, are very sad. If you were to come to our program here this next year, and I don't have any thought that it's necessarily going to change, but one of the individuals that was greatly helped by us, there's 10 different categories of adverse childhood experiences, and there's different types of abuse. There's neglect, and then there's physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's being raised by an addict, etc. And there's all these different categories of adverse childhood experiences. And we get this idea because modern psychology and psychiatry have not been able to help these people. This girl that you will meet, who's now part of our staff, suffered all 10 categories of adverse childhood experiences in a pretty severe way, and multiple attempts at suicide, and you could see underneath that she could be a gem of a person, but the gems never came out. And she had been in psych wards. She had been in, had counseling, all of these things. And you know, this is how the Lord works sometimes. I actually work 2, maybe 3 days a month in a local hospital. I'm an internal medicine physician as well, and I like critical care work, and I'm a critical care doctor. And I keep my skills up. They would like me to work more than that, but obviously I have other things that I must do, and so it's just a little bit. But the first day, I got the assignments of all the patients that I was taking over from the doctor. This woman had just been admitted that night with her suicide attempt. And so I see her on the list, and I go in there, and she is not able to really process because of what she had done to try to commit suicide. Her brain hadn't really come back yet. Her husband was there, and he says, "Doctor, we've been through this so many times, and I just don't know what to do. It's not that she doesn't have money. She's married to me. We have means. It's not a money problem. We have beautiful kids. It's not a family problem. But she just gets triggered and she will try to end her life." Well, it turns out the triggering, I didn't know at that time, but the triggering had to do with her interfacing with her family that were part of those 10 adverse childhood experiences. And her mother, who was a meth addict when she grew up and had her mother the rest of the kids, when the other kids did not turn out the way the mother wanted it to, she would blame our patient Angie for all of that. And so Angie got the blame for everything in the family. And she thought her life wasn't worth living when she would interface with that old family. But nonetheless, she also had addictions. She was an alcoholic as well, etc. 10 adverse childhood experiences. 10 different categories of adverse childhood experiences, plus all of these other hits. I think she had all 10 hits when she came to us. And this woman today is depression-free, anxiety-free, medication-free, not on any addictions, and she is the epitome of a wonderful mother and wife and family member. She had never really had a full-time job her entire life. She was mothering kids, and now she actually, and she loves it, she will actually come and be the hydrotherapist and be the assistant to the leader of those going through the program. Because whatever they've gone through, she's been through it. And she can tell you that there is a way out of this, and you are going to get better. And she's very encouraging to them. And of course, she did have to undergo some cognitive behavioral therapy in regards to what she was set up for and all the distorted ways that she was looking at life as a result of all this. Her mother did some really, unspeakable, terrible things to her. And she won't go into all of the details. But this is it's almost become more common today as well, where we see mothers themselves being part of the abuse of their own kids. And it's so sad, but the good news is that God still loves those individuals, and God still wants them to completely heal. And they can heal, and He knows that. He knows they have a frontal lobe that if they just get educated and get in a supportive environment and have compassionate people work for them, they can actually completely heal as did Angie. So if you come to the program, you'll already know her story ahead of time. She actually tells the story on day 3. I'll tell you why. And we have several of our patients who have gotten better tell the story on day 3. And let me explain a little bit about what happens in our residential program. When they come to our residential program, the things that we're teaching them are not optional. They will be optional in 10 days when they go home, but they're not optional there. In other words, they have to go to bed on time. They have to wake up on time. They have to have their light therapy on time. They have to do the hydrotherapy. You heard about Jared. They didn't take no for an answer when he said, I'm not getting in that cold. Now, it's done in a very compassionate, loving way, encouraging way. Our staff are experts at health coaching and helping people to go through this. But when they realize there was a lot of money spent, and this is a 10-day program, and it's only day 3, and I can't do what I want to do when I want to do it, they're thinking about exiting. And so day 3 is when they tend to have their worst day because they realize, I can't get out of this. I am going to have to get up on time. I'm going to have to eat this diet. I'm going to have to exercise. We'll even make sure that they're out there exercising when it's their exercise time. I'm going to have to go to the therapy session. I'm going to have to keep to my schedule. And when they realize that and they haven't felt any better by day 3, in fact, they might even feel a little bit worse. They might be withdrawing. They might have other things where they're saying, I'm not getting any better, and I'm not in charge of my life anymore. I'm out of here. That's why on day 3, we bring in the other people that thought the same thing that are now completely healed and better. And so that encourages them on day 3. Stick with this. Day 4, things start to get better. It doesn't take long. Day 5, better yet. Day 6, by day 7, you can't even recognize the same people anymore. And so what do we do after day 7 when really everything starts putting together? We then get them ready for re-entry so they can do this at home without the external accountability. And so that's where we go through all of the things related to self-control, making and staying with positive lifestyle choices. And it's amazing. We've done studies 5 months later, these people stick to the program. It's not just 10 days better and then they go back to life as is. You just heard Jared, the marked change that's taken place. Angie also never heard of a plant-based diet, and she's still on a plant-based diet and loving it, and loving to teach her daughters and all of those things about it. So adverse childhood experiences, yes, it requires more than the behaviors. It does require counseling. And then there are lifestyle causes such as lack of physical fitness, lack of fresh air, lack of light. One of the things that we have found out is very healthy for the brain is, and there's been studies done on this, green spaces. I won't go through all the study on that, but these are green live spaces, nature-based interventions, and even something called gardening. We have a session called Farm Fun that is part of their healing process. And some patients are not very happy. It's like, I've paid this money to come here and they're making me work out in their farm. But after 1 hour of work, they come back and they're all smiling, they're all talking, they're all having a good time. And this actually helped their frontal lobe circulation. Working with our hands actually improves the circulation to our frontal lobe. Gardening reduces depression and anxiety, increases life satisfaction, quality of life, increases self-esteem. And then there's something called forest bathing. What is forest bathing? It's actually just walking out into a forest. And why is that so beneficial? Well, there's 2 reasons in concert, but one of them is probably more important than the other. Now, there are companies that have become billion-dollar companies as a result of learning about forest bathing. Anyone not want to know how they made their billions of dollars learning about forest bathing? Yeah, exactly right. So what happens with forest bathing is that we are breathing the oils that come from the trees, and these can have an antidepressant effect. One of those is pine cone extract. Pine cone extract will actually help you cognitively. And so this is why it's far better to exercise outside in a forest than it is to go to your gym, where there's fake plants, maybe, and not the actual real plants. But then they have found out which substances are most antidepressing or anti-anxiety, and then they can dispense them to you in an oil, and you can buy a dispenser and have it in your own home and help yourself that way as well. So that's how they've been able to make a lot of money from that. But there's also something even more important, and it's called near-infrared light. Near-infrared light you can't see because it's below the color spectrum. But it's not far infrared. Far infrared, if you've ever been to an infrared sauna, that's far infrared, and that heats you up. You know you're getting infrared from the sun. I had this happen to me on Thursday at Weimar. It was 59 degrees out there, but I was out in the sun, and it felt like it was 74 degrees. Why? Because I was getting the infrared rays from the sun. Infrared will warm you up. Now, if there's clouds that come over, it's not going to feel like 74 anymore. If there's a wind, it'll feel like more like 55, because infrared cannot go through clouds. Ultraviolet can go through clouds. You can still get vitamin D. Ultraviolet is what you make your vitamin D from. But we're finding out vitamin D, as important as it is not near as important as infrared. And infrared, because it's longer wavelengths travel more. I don't know if you've noticed, but this is true with even sound. If someone pulls up beside you in a car and your windows are up and their windows are up, what sound are you going to hear from their radio coming into your car? It's going to be those bass sounds, that boom, boom, because those are longer wavelengths. They actually penetrate. And so that's true with infrared. And so infrared actually penetrates the skull, and it penetrates the skull to the same length that the gray matter is. If you've ever seen a brain, the gray matter is on the outside of the brain. And why is it gray compared to white? It's gray because of the density of the mitochondria. That's where your brain energy is. And the brain is the most mitochondrial dense organ in the body. Even as you're resting here today and processing, it's taking at least 30% of the energy from yourself right now, even though it only is about 5% of your total body weight. So that's 6 times the amount of energy just at rest. Now, if you're really trying to study for a test or processing, it might be even more than that. And the near-infrared, when it penetrates the gray matter, it's actually penetrating the neurons, and it's producing intracellular melatonin that protects your mitochondria from burning out. So it's one of the best solutions to preventing burnout. It's one of the best solutions for brain fog, for all of these things that have to do with brain energy, and it's just getting outside in the sun when there's not clouds. And the nice thing is, it doesn't have to be direct sun. By the way, making vitamin D, if you're making vitamin D, you can tell if your body's going to make it or not, being out in the sun, if your shadow is shorter than you are. That means it has to be more direct sun to be able to make vitamin D. But infrared, that'll penetrate your body and your brain from sunup to sundown. A lot of people thought it wasn't worthwhile to get out into the sun if I can't make vitamin D. Oh, yes, it is. That infrared is very important, and the infrared you also get in reflection off of the green trees. So if there's not sun, and you see that nice bright green, even that is reflecting infrared light and helping you. One of the reasons I talked about last night, I talked about the problems with smartphones and screens and the distraction element, which shrinks the anterior cingulate gyrus. But there's another problem with screens, and that is you can't get infrared light from screens. And you don't even want to go outside when you're on a screen. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's really hard to read your phone when you're out there getting bright light. And so this is one of the reasons why COVID was such a disaster. They told people to stay indoors. And they told them to just interface through Zoom. No wonder our mental health worsened during COVID. I remember at Weimar, just 5 miles away from Weimar, there's a trail called Stevens Trail. That's one of the most beautiful trails in the country. If it was in any other state besides California, it'd be a national park. But there's so many national parks in California, they won't let them have double digits. There's only 9 national parks. And so there's a lot of state parks or even city parks that would be national parks in a place like Oklahoma or Texas or even east of the Mississippi, et cetera. A beautiful place to live. But I went to do this Stevens Trail. It's a 6.5-mile trail, and it requires fitness. There's a lot of hills and things, but the most beautiful scenery you can see. And right after COVID happened, they had a big sign. Trail closed. Do not go on trail. COVID. There's COVID on this trail? You might run into somebody that's on the trail that might have COVID, so you're not allowed there. Well, Weimar University has 15 miles of trails on our property. We're the largest contiguous piece of privately owned property in the entire county now because it's built up all around us. And we did not close our trails. We let the public come in. In fact, you can see it on alltrails.com and see all of those Weimar trails because we wanted people to remain healthy during COVID. The more outdoors you were, the less likely you were to succumb to the effects of COVID. And some of that had to do with the infrared actually stimulating our immune system to work better. The ones who primarily had COVID issues were the ones who were indoors, who got exposed indoors and not because of their outdoor exposure. So another hit category, we've gone through, this is number 4. First one, genetics. Second, adverse childhood experiences. Third, lifestyle causes. 4, circadian rhythm causes. This is a sleep-wake cycle. We talked a little bit about that last night, of how we fix that through blue light in the morning. And it also actually helps our hormones significantly. And then we have addiction causes. And whether it's a substance or a non-substance addiction, it does adversely affect the brain and the brain chemistry as we go back to these dopamine surges and causing all sorts of issues. A lot of those dopamine surges are actually found online. And so the dopamine set point continues to lower and lower, and so people think they need these addictions. I think Jared was in that category where you said you're always going to be addicted. In other words, you didn't think you could actually enjoy life without participating in the dopamine surge and addiction aspect of things, but how much better it is afterwards. By the way, one of the substances that a lot of people aren't being warned about that's highly addictive is marijuana. And marijuana is going to play with that dopamine set point. By the way, why did our country make a mistake in legalizing this frontal lobe suppressing substance that's addictive? What was the upside to the politicians? The upside to the politicians was money. Because if it's illegal, you can't tax it. It's only sold on the black market. So they said, okay, it's being used quite a bit. It's under the radar. Let's put it out there legal, and let's tax it, and we'll be able to pay the teachers more, and we'll be able to balance our budgets, and we'll be able to do all of those things. And of course, they need to hire more police. They need to, teachers' wages have not gone up as the places where they have legalized marijuana at all. It's caused actually more academic problems. It actually, repeated marijuana use has been shown in nice controlled trials to lower your IQ, and if you've been taking it a long time, it will lower it permanently. Lowers motivation. But yet people think, well, I can walk this tightrope because it does make me feel calmer. But there are things, you can't get THC out of the marijuana. Some people say, well, I'm using it for the CBD. Well, even if you try to get the THC out, you can't get it all out. How do we know that? Because we actually do urine tests that are only looking at THC, and people are taking, quotes, CBD products, and they light up. You can't get the THC out of it, and that's what can cause the psychosis. That can cause some permanent neurological issues. In fact, psychosis is dramatically going up in America as a result of marijuana use. Just look up marijuana-induced psychosis. It's everywhere. And if you have the genetics for psychosis, in other words, you have a mutated gene that can cause psychosis, one marijuana usage can put you over the edge, and you can become schizophrenic for life. That's a fate worse than death. So it's not worth trying this. And of course, it might not happen the first time, but it might happen the third time or the 10th time or whatever. But there are things that can calm you better than marijuana that are not frontal lobe suppressing. Where does Selexon come from? It's significant anti-anxiety relieving properties without sedation, without addiction, or without frontal lobe suppression. It's now also found to be a natural antidepressant. It increases serotonin release and extracellular brain serotonin levels. And they did a placebo-controlled trial, and they found out relief of generalized anxiety disorder in 76%, with over double the improvement compared with placebo. And it also improved sleep quality and had no sedation. So they even compared it against the most common drug used in America for anxiety. What is that? Lorazepam. By the way, lorazepam, short-term gain, long-term problem. It's going to fill your GABA receptors, and then your body's going to, after a month, quit producing GABA. Its manufacturing plant goes away. So now when you get off the lorazepam, you're 10 times worse in anxiety than what you had to begin with. Yes, all of those PAMs. Those are called the benzodiazepines. By the way, you can look our name up. We're actually well known to be the place to go to be able to get off your benzodiazepines, and your anxiety level will go down. But one of our solutions, among many, is to trade the lorazepam, or Ativan for Lavella. Where is, the trade name is Lavella, and it's called Lavella because it comes from lavender oil. So it's a natural substance. Since lavender oil showed no sedative effects in our study and has no potential for drug abuse, Selexon appears to be an effective and well-tolerated alternative to benzodiazepines for the amelioration of generalized anxiety. And it's cheaper than marijuana. And so, this is what humanity often ignores things that are only beneficial. But they focus in on things that have benefits and risks. And they think that they can walk that tightrope. And somehow they're going to get the benefits without the risks. And there are so many things. There's actually far more things that are only beneficial that don't have any risks. And humanity will completely ignore them. And so it's kind of a conundrum. Why does humanity, as smart as it is, ignore the things that are healthy for you across the board? Well, this takes us to nutritional causes of depression. This is one of the most overlooked cause categories. This is a review that was done 10 years ago. Now, I can say this was a prestigious European journal in psychiatry. It's known as the most prestigious psychiatric journal on that side of the planet. And after doing a review of all the peer-reviewed literature on nutrition and mental health, this is what they said. Diet is as important to psychiatry as it is to cardiology, gastroenterology, and endocrinology. Endocrinology is the specialty that has diabetes as part of it. They go on to say, nutritional medicine should now be considered as a mainstream element of psychiatric practice. In other words, the evidence is so clear that if your psychiatrist is not asking you about what you're eating, he is old school. If he's ignoring the effects of nutrition on the brain, he is not up to date. Now, are most psychiatrists up to date or not up to date? And you might wonder, why are they not up to date? Well, I can tell you, it has to do with the economics of medicine. When a new drug comes out, like mirtazapine, that helped Jared gain 57 pounds in just a few months to help his depression, there's a nice-looking pharmaceutical representative coming to the psychiatrist's office to tell him everything about that drug. In fact, that pharmaceutical representative will feed the entire office whatever they want carried in for that day so that they can explain to that psychiatrist how to prescribe it, what to look for. When a study comes out showing that Selexon helps mental health, there's no good-looking Selexon representative coming to the office. There's not even a bad-looking Selexon representative coming to the office. Why? Because it can't be patented. The study is actually in his psychiatric journal about Selexon, but he's too busy to be reading peer-reviewed literature. And so even doctors have to be spoon-fed, and often they're spoon-fed by pharmaceutical representatives that are coming in to feed them because it's convenient. We can get our whole office staff fed, we can learn about this drug. Of course, I'm the avenue that patients can get this drug from because it has so many risks, it can't be over the counter. And so this is the economics of medicine. When a study comes out showing that actually cardio fitness is better than Zoloft, there's no fitness representative coming to the office to tell that psychiatrist about that study. So how do they learn about it? They either have to read their journals or they need to come to Weimar University to our annual Emotional Intelligence Summit, because we keep up with all the latest in scientific literature, and they can learn those things at a conference and get continuing medical education. The American Medical Association actually certifies us for the top credits in educating doctors about expanding their toolbox besides just pharmaceuticals in treating mental illness, which of course is going to be limited. Now notice this is also a quote from that study. Now is the time for the recognition of the importance of nutrition and what else? Nutrient supplementation in psychiatry. So, you might wonder why we use a plant-based diet. There have been lots of randomized, we can't have them double-blinded, placebo-controlled in regards to diet, but we can still do randomized controlled trials. And there's been a lot of diets that have been tried for depression. Only one diet has shown improvement in depression in a randomized controlled trial in as little as 2 weeks. And what do you think the diet is? It's a plant-based diet. Benefits start in 2 weeks. Why? The study says no arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid is present in eggs, fish, meat. It's a pro-inflammatory molecule. And depression and anxiety is often due to inflammation of the brain. We can actually see the inflammatory markers. So when we take the arachidonic acid away, the inflammation starts to go away. It's also the highest diet in antioxidants. Antioxidants are very healthy for the brain. And it also has no cholesterol. Now, here's one of the things that a lot of even psychiatrists don't understand. They'll be putting these patients on these antidepressants and they're not getting any better. And one of the reasons why they may not be getting any better is because their cholesterol is too high for the medicine to work. High cholesterol increases treatment-resistant depression. So we have to get the cholesterol down for sometimes even the nutrient supplements to work. And so this is a critically important element in our treatment, is to measure everybody's lipids, to see where they're at, to try to get that cholesterol down. And you get better tryptophan and tyrosine brain uptake on a plant-based diet. Tryptophan is needed to make serotonin. Can't make it without it. It's an essential amino acid. And tyrosine, you need to make dopamine and norepinephrine. Now, dopamine is going to help you with motivation. Norepinephrine is going to help you with energy. And so, other things that are very important, and this was found, actually, I remember there were 4 different substances, natural substances that were better than any antidepressant on the market. One of those substances I didn't mention, of the 2 remaining, is omega-3. Omega-3 is an essential fat that our brains need, called linoleic acid. It converts into EPA, which is a mood enhancer, and it converts into DHA, which will help us with our memory. It requires B3 and B6, magnesium, zinc, and vitamin C, and also upregulates brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor is a brain fertilizer that helps the brain to be able to change very positively for the better. So you can see the foods high in omega-3. Oatmeal has some, whole wheat. By the way, if you're eating refined grains, no omega-3. It's been taken out. Refined grains should not be eaten, but whole wheat grains, despite the new food guide pyramid, whole grains are healthy for your brain. And they're healthy for many reasons. One is because wheat has glutamine in it. Glutamine helps you make GABA. It's the highest natural substance of glutamine available to you. That's another very important amino acid. Somehow people think grains don't have protein. They are loaded with protein. By the way, I spoke in Costa Rica the other day. Costa Rica, you have all vegetation galore, and you have these thin cattle. They look like they're gaunt. Why are they looking so gaunt? Because Costa Rica does not feed them grains. And so they are a little malnourished. And grains are actually part of getting a very good balanced diet for our brain. And studies have shown a whole grain diet will be helpful to your mental health, in part due to this omega-3. Notice what else has it? Spinach, broccoli, avocado, navy beans. Kale has even more. Edamame even more, or green soybeans. Red bell pepper, firm tofu. And the 4 highest sources, I should say the top 5. Top 5 sources, tofu is number 5, hemp is number 4, walnuts, number 3, number 2 is chia seeds, and what's number 1? Flaxseed. This is why when people come to our program, we're having them eat a tablespoon of flaxseed about 3 times a day. Now, some people have not heard us right. I know 1 or 2 people during the course of our program thought they were to eat 3 tablespoons for every meal. And if you eat 3 tablespoons for every meal, it becomes a flaxative. And so they're having to go off the trail and relieve themselves. And how much flaxseed are you eating? And so, no, it's just 3 tablespoons a day, but it is a very important element. So, carbs, healthy carbs are actually helpful for us because they get more tryptophan into the brain. It's an insulin-mediated mechanism that gets the tryptophan into the brain. Now, there's so much more we could say about nutrition and mental health, but I'm going to fast forward to the antioxidants. I think it's important to know. Eating plant foods in their whole form provide great nutritional benefits. Plant foods exceed that of their component parts. For instance, 1 cup of cooked kale has 50 milligrams of vitamin C and 13 units of vitamin E. But the antioxidant potential of that 1 cup of kale is equal to 800 milligrams of vitamin C and 1,100 units of vitamin E. This is why we don't feed people these antioxidant vitamins of A, C, and E in capsules when they come to us. Because far better is for them to get the antioxidants from the plant foods themselves. Antioxidants reduce the breakdown of neurotransmitters, increase serotonin and dopamine concentrations, 2 very important neurotransmitters. Antioxidant trials produce improved depression and anxiety scores and quality of life. So what are the top 10 antioxidant vegetables? Number 10, eggplant. Eggplant is the only food that we know of in the world that is high in acetylcholine. Not just high in it, that it has any at all. Acetylcholine is a natural antihypertensive. And just 1,200 milligrams of eggplant twice daily works as good as a blood pressure medicine in lowering your blood pressure. But it won't lower it too low if your blood pressure is fine. So eggplant is very important, and I'm actually prescribing eggplant for our hypertensive patients as well. Very important part. Corn is number 9. Onions, number 8. Red bell peppers. I had those for lunch today. I don't know how many of you stayed for the potluck, but there was red bell pepper salad there. Beets. Now, beets also have nitrates, and nitrates will also naturally lower your blood pressure. A tablespoon of beet powder twice a day, and if you combine it with eggplant powder, it's like 2 antihypertensives, and it can really help avoid having to take pharmaceuticals. But beets are loaded with antioxidants. Anyone want to guess what's in the top 5 antioxidant vegetables? Broccoli, yes. Broccoli is number 5. Had that today as well. Number 4, Brussels sprouts. By the way, if you don't like Brussels sprouts, come to Weimar University. You will love the Brussels sprouts, the way it's made there. Number 3, spinach. Number 2, kale. What's the number 1 antioxidant vegetable? Number 1, garlic. I'm actually married to a Romanian, and one of the advantages of that is every entree starts out with 4 cloves of garlic. The top 10 antioxidant fruits. Number 10, grapefruit. Number 9, kiwi. Number 8, cherries. Number 7, red grapes. Number 6, oranges. Number 5, it's a humble fruit. It often doesn't get mentioned, but plums actually have more antioxidants than those fruits behind it. The top 4 are all in one category. The berries. Number 4 is raspberries. Number 3, strawberries. Number 2, blackberries. And number 1, I mentioned it earlier, blueberries. And so participating in eating those top 10 antioxidant fruits and vegetables can be very healthy for us. So there are other hits as well. There's toxic hits. These are toxins to the brain. One of the common toxins is mercury. And this is one of the sad things about our current modern society. We used to actually be able to get omega-3 from fish. Fish actually don't produce it themselves. They get it from the plants of the waters. Plants of the waters are high in omega-3. But the studies now showing on fish is fish actually increases your risk of depression. And one of the reasons why it increases it is because of the mercury content of fish. And so the mercury outweighs this. And of course we mentioned fish also has arachidonic acid. And so we're trying to get our omega-3, and we can get it from plant sources that are not fish, that don't have the mercury and the arachidonic acid. But we will see mercury. We'll also see, this is a big one as well. A lot of people are not aware of this. Too much copper. Too much copper causes your brain to make too much norepinephrine. That's like adrenaline. It fuels anxiety, and not enough dopamine. So there's an imbalance there. And so we have to get those copper levels down. Copper is present a lot in seafood. Anything that comes from the sea is going to be high in copper, but a lot of copper issues are actually due to a genetic issue where you can't carry metals well. We measure that through the ceruloplasmin level. And you may not be getting much copper from seafood or things like that, but there's copper in just about everything. Plant foods have it as well. But if you can't carry it, your free copper level goes up too high. So we actually treat that by giving the patient zinc. Zinc lowers copper. And so we will gradually increase the zinc. We don't want to give them a bunch of zinc right away because the copper comes down too low and they get a little tremor. And so we just have it come down for a safe landing, and it will help hormonal depression. It's in a supplement we call Brain that also has the B6 that will help as well. So these toxins we can do something about besides just avoiding it. Lead and cadmium and other toxins can be an issue as well. Zinc, fortunately, is not toxic. The only toxicity known to zinc is that if it lowers your copper too much. And so for those that have that low ceruloplasmin level, the classic case of that is a disease called Wilson's disease that I treat as a GI doctor. We can give them huge doses of zinc to lower that copper, and they won't have any of the liver disease, they won't have any of the depression, they won't have any of those issues. It's simply due to a genetic mutation that can be, the effects of it can be corrected through supplementation. The eighth are social or stress causes. If there's social tensions, if there's social isolation, that's a key sign that you could have this as a factor in your life. If you're even isolating in regards to technology, that's a sign as well, and so that requires the cognitive behavioral therapy. Then there are medical causes like thyroid causes. So many of these can be treated through natural causes. By the way, if you've had a head concussion, the thing you need is omega-3 and infrared. You've got to get that near infrared light to prevent that inflammation post-concussion. And then there are frontal lobe causes. And of course, this has to do with your analytic ability, your creativity, your love of learning, and the spiritual aspect of the program, including even the music aspect, is highly important. And of course, the CBT can also help the frontal lobe by helping us to analyze our thoughts and correct our distorted, unhelpful thoughts. So, what are the results? We educate this in the community program, and this is what Jared is going to be training you to put on tomorrow. Over 10,420 people have successfully completed it. The last time it was measured, it was that amount. It's probably up to about 14 or 15,000 now. It's been used in every continent except Antarctica. It's the most common, I should say the most studied program ever developed for depression and anxiety. And for those who have major depression or major anxiety, which is the majority that come through the program, 94.5% will improve at least one category in 8 weeks. if they have severe depression. Some people think, well, if I have severe, I shouldn't go there. No, severe depression can be helped out as well. 90% improvement for those with moderate depression, at least a category. Mild depression, 84%. And the average clinical response, their depression scores go down by 51.7%. So the average person is actually having a clinical response which is superior to what would be anticipated with pharmaceuticals. So just by educating the patients and coaching the patients, it doesn't mean it has to be either this or pharmaceuticals. Anyone with pharmaceuticals can come to that as well. So you can see the before and after scores of all of the individuals that had depression. Anxiety, amazingly, although anxiety is thought to be more difficult to treat, this program, as good as it does for depression, it even does better with anxiety. You can see the amount of people that came with anxiety that are leaving in 8 weeks with no anxiety, and you can see even a better improvement score in anxiety. And so the program has also been shown to help those with head concussions, autoimmune disease, addictions, chronic infections. If they're not on a regular exercise program, it'll help them, even if they're on the standard American diet or unhealthy a diet, or if they've been abused or have adverse childhood experiences, even if they've had stroke, diabetes, sleep disturbances, inflammation, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and more. So anyone that has some of those underlying causes, it's actually a good program to try, and it's very inexpensive. But 98% of participants will have significant improvement in their depression or anxiety score in 10 days in the residential program. Some people, for whatever reason, can't do the community program. They don't have the ability to even go to the program or whatever, or they're so severe they can't necessarily process the program and put it in. And so or if they failed on that program, we recommend the 10-day program. Interestingly, we've done studies who have done your community program first. They always do better than those who haven't done the community program, so it still helped them. But when they come to the residential program, that's where they'll find the solution. So notice 68% depression will be completely eradicated in 10 days. Now, we call it a 20-week program because as they stay on those elements, they'll continue to improve. So I don't think if it's not eradicated that they're not being helped. Yes, they're being helped. Anxiety eradication is 81% in just 10 days. 98% of our participants improve. You might say, well, what about the 2%? The 2% could include people who are not compliant with the program. We have people that show up to the program, but despite our best efforts at helping them to be compliant, they're not compliant. And so you have to be willing. As we tell people, it's not the program that works, it's them working the program that works. And that's why we always applaud them when they get better, because that means they did work the program. But there's also might be in a few less than 1% category where someone has a chronic infection like Lyme disease that needs months of treatment in addition to what we're doing to help out. So sometimes the chronic infections can be in that category as well. This is, I thought I'd show the picture of Christy. I talked about her earlier today. This is Christy, who had tried to commit suicide 5 times, 2 very seriously. And this is information that you might want to write down. Our EQ Camp for Kids, those are the dates. Our EQ Summit's coming up. This is our website, nedleyhealth.com, or you can call us at that number. There's also Nedley Health online programs. You can take this community program online. If you want to find out about the residential program, depressionthewayout.com, or if you want to go to the residential program, please write down that number. Everyone has to go through our screener and have the program explained to you. It's a free consultation, actually, and you can get that by doing that number as well. And so I might, Jared, before we close, have Nathan come up if he's here. Okay, and then I might have you come up as well. So my son has joined me. He lives in the other side of the DFW area. Takes him over, well, an hour to get here. Decatur, he was active in his own church today, so he wasn't here. But I just want to, he has some things available. We will take some questions, as I mentioned. And come on up, Jared and Nathan. Any of you want to say, Jared, maybe you ought to talk a little bit about the program tomorrow first, and then we'll have Nathan talk about what he has.
Yeah, just a friendly reminder, or let me start off with the question. Who here was blessed by Dr. Nedley's presentations over the last 2 days? Amen. Let's give him a round of applause. All right, so now let's not be hearers, let's be what? Amen. So let's take this message to our community. Let's change one life at a time. My life was one of them that has been changed in dramatic ways, and I've seen literally hundreds. You may not think that you can make a difference in your community, but I've thought and I felt the exact same way. And I promise you, if I can do it, anybody can. So I hope to see as many of you as possible tomorrow morning for our training at 9 a.m. If you're interested in the program, please be here at about 8:30. Right after this presentation, we will be doing registration in the back for the program tomorrow for the training. And it is
the back of the church.
Yeah, the back of the church. It is a administrative training on how to successfully run a program. So any questions from anybody on what that looks like? Also quick reminder that there is a time change, so make sure to set your clocks appropriately so you're not showing up at 10 a.m.
It'll be 7:30, the old time.
Any questions?
One thing to add regarding the training, next week is our annual Emotional Intelligence Summit, and we're celebrating some of our community leaders at a dinner. One of our community leaders in the last, I think it's a little over 10 years, has had close to 400 people go through her community program in a small town in Washington, and she's had almost 200 not Adventists come through that program. So the impact that just one person who really takes this, or one church, one community that really binds on to this message, can make an incredible impact. And again, that's in a very small town in Washington. So you don't have to be concerned about the size of your town, but obviously here you can do incredible things with that program. What was the other? Just what
yeah, do you want to tell them about what you brought? I don't know what you brought.
Yeah, we have some supplements and some of my dad's books, Dr. Nedley's books. We have kits. I guess for anyone who's training, do they need to sign up tonight?
As much as possible, I'd like to get your registration information so that we don't have to have a big line doing that tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so if you're planning on coming to the training tomorrow morning, just come by the booth, check in with us. Our table is set up straight behind these doors here in the foyer. Check in with us. You can get the materials tonight, or just have them tomorrow morning.
And that way they don't need to come at 8:30, they can come at 8:50?
8:50.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll give you 20 more minutes of sleep.
But yeah, there is a cost. I don't know what we're still working out the details on pricing and everything, but yeah, normally it's $500 for an associate director training. That's the retail price. I know we've gathered a discount for you, but I don't exactly know what it's going to be. So we will finalize that, but by tomorrow morning. And then, any other questions? Yes,
and you get a lot of materials with that. It's not just the training.
Dr. Nedley.
Yes.
I would like to know, does Weimer treat blood disorder patients?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know what blood disorder you're talking about, but we have treated many individuals with blood disorders.
May I explain it a little bit?
Sure.
I was diagnosed with, this long name word, myeloplasmic something syndrome.
Yes.
And my bone marrow is not producing red cells.
MDS, yes.
So I have to be on this heavy-duty medication that keeps me going, or else I have to do blood transfusion. So I was wanting to know, do you all treat?
Yes, my father-in-law diagnosed with MDS, and he went through our program, and there are certain things that can help MDS that a lot of the MDS specialists aren't aware of, just like certain psychiatrists aren't aware of some of the things that we talked about here. And he was able to dramatically reduce, almost eliminate the blood transfusions that he had to go through. So there's different forms of MDS, but it would be worthwhile for you to consider Weimar New Start. Yeah. All right, yes. The duration of the training?
So we're gonna start tomorrow morning at about 9 a.m. and we should be wrapped up by 1 p.m. It's a one-day training. Now, there will be another component. Typically what we have, the participants coming to the training, they have to watch videos, but since Dr. Nedley has already covered a lot of that material in the last few presentations, we're gonna remove that requirement. The one final thing you'll have to do after tomorrow will be to take the test that Dr. Nedley was talking about, the depression and anxiety assessment test. It takes less than half an hour to do, just so you can see your own score on depression, anxiety, and emotional intelligence, and then you will be able to help administer that when you are running your own program in your community. But we're going to cover all those details, yeah. Yes,
All
ma'am.
right.
Yeah, I do have the same questions. How about sickle cell anemia?
Sickle cell, yes. Well, it is very, of course, sickle cell is a genetic condition as well. And if we are not living as healthful a life, the sickle cell crisis is going to be far more common. And so, yes, the New Start program can prevent sickle cell crises, and particularly in regards to nutritional factors and pulmonary factors and others. It's important to even know how to breathe if you have sickle cell, because hypoxemia can actually induce a crisis as well. So yeah, sickle cell, we won't be able to get rid of the genetic defect that causes it. There will always be a predisposition to it, but we can teach the individual how to decrease their likelihood of sickle cell crisis.
You advertise on YouTube this supplement for brain health. Do you have that with you today, or?
Nathan, do you want to answer that? Yes. Quite a few different options and supplements that you can look over and see.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Are there any prerequisites to do?
The question was, are there any prereqs to do the program, and there are not. Only prereq that you need to have is the desire to help other people. Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to teach you health coaching. One of the reasons why you don't have to have prerequisites is you're not necessarily the one doing the teaching. You press play on a video, and so that information is given. They have a workbook where they can go through, and that will help them out. But what you are going to be trained to do is how to be a health coach after those videos are played, because it's not just them watching the video. You then divide up into little groups, and that's where the health coaching begins, and you're going to learn how to be able to do that and to be able to compassionately keep people in the program and keep them successful. Yes.
Yes, I have a question on epilepsy.
Epilepsy, yes, there's many different forms of epilepsy, and when you have seizure activity, it's also very important for you to follow New Start principles, particularly the sleep aspect of things. Sleep deprivation is not good for people who have a tendency of epilepsy. And there are certain nutritional principles that can also help them. Also, something that's very important in regards to epilepsy, and this is new discoveries, the near-infrared light. There was a patient, I do phone consultations. If you want a phone consultation from me, unfortunately, it'll take months because we're backed up for a long time to be able to do it. But there was a young girl up in northern Canada, British Columbia, that had serious epilepsy, and she saw the neurologist in Canada who put her on benzodiazepines at the age of 8. 8 years old, now getting on an addictive drug to try to prevent seizures. And they said, isn't there an alternative? And the doctor said, I'm not going to offer you an alternative. This is the first line for this type of seizure. You have to take it. Well, the 8-year-old didn't want to take it, and the parents didn't want to put her on it. So they called me. And now she had been having seizures. Interestingly, she was outside in the summer a lot, and her seizures went away come April and May, and they would return again in October. And I realized that near-infrared was helping her. So I told the family, what you should do is get a near-infrared helmet. It has to be the right wavelength. But that near-infrared helmet, 15 minutes a day, prevented her from having any more seizures in the evening. And she never did get on the medicine. They were very worried because the kid could have been taken away from them in Canada in regards to not being proper parents when they're not putting her on medicine. But I told the parents, they can just tell them that the 8-year-old, you're not going to force it down her throat. She doesn't want to take it herself, and at least you could try this. And it turned out to be very helpful. Now, I'm not saying that's going to help every form of seizure. It's certainly not going to hurt. And most seizure patients, epileptic patients, are going to need to take medicine for their seizures. Don't try to get off of it like she necessarily was doing. She hadn't even started it. But it's just an example of some lifestyle principles that can help to intervene in preventing seizures.
Would you like to share with them my experience with epilepsy?
Go ahead, yes, go ahead.
So when I came to the program 5 years ago to the DR program, I have epilepsy. Mine was a result of a head injury in Iraq in 2003. Grand mal epilepsy, the kind where you completely lose consciousness, and a very painful experience because I would be walking through the house and just fall over on whatever I was nearby. I've been completely 100% seizure free for 5 years now after coming to Dr. Nedley's program. One thing to note, I was very badly wanting to quit that as well, along with all the antidepressants and the opiate medications, but that was one that Dr. Nedley wisely decided to keep me on because subsequent EEGs still detected seizure activity, but nevertheless, I haven't had one in over 5 years, so praise God for that.
All right, any other questions for me or for Jared? Yes. Yeah, so how much do you need? You don't need any more than an hour. We know anything more than an hour is not going to hurt. Fortunately, unlike ultraviolet, you can't get too much infrared. There is no known side effects of getting too much infrared. So you can be out as a farmer from sunup to sundown as long as you prevent yourself from getting that burn, which infrared does not burn you. It's the ultraviolet that burns you. But there's no problems with getting excess, but we're not seeing significant advantages beyond an hour. But we do see significant advantages with just 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes a day, you can start getting a therapeutic effect. All right.
So the question was, are there any alternative days that somebody could get training? We offer a fully online training as well. Typically the live trainings only happen usually a few times a year up at Weimar, California, in the spring of the upcoming EQ Summit, and then in the fall for the health student training. So it's really kind of a special event to be here in your community and church doing it, but I understand that there are work commitments. If you really want to get trained, meet with me after, and we can arrange that via an online training as well. Good question.
The online training is longer.
The online training is about 12 hours long, so you get about a third of that if you come tomorrow.
All right, any other questions? Yes. Yes, sunblock blocks ultraviolet, and it can also block some of the infrared. Unfortunately, a lot of the windows, one of the things we learned in the flu pandemic is that the patients who were admitted to the hospital who were next to the window lived, and the ones who were away from the window actually died. One of our Weimar physicians actually works in a critical care unit in Sacramento where COVID was just rampant. And he actually works for Kaiser in their intensive care unit. He made every one of those patients go outside on the porch every day to get infrared. They're on a ventilator and they're going outside. The nurses didn't like it, and so he was actually moving them out there himself to get that infrared. He never lost a single COVID patient. This is a critically important element when you're sick, to get outside. You don't need to exercise or rest, but to get outside in the sun or have infrared. And so many of the hospitals today, they have infrared blockers. All those black windows, they're blocking it all. And hospitals are going to need to change. They're starting to recognize it. So new hospitals are trying to find ways to get more light, even maybe on both sides of the room, where it's not just the one side of the room that's bringing light. Maybe it could be where they're exposed to an outdoor courtyard, on both sides, because that outdoor aspect of infrared light is very important for healing. Okay, one hand back there.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It's been really helpful and insightful. I'm wondering, with the large percentage of women who have uterine fibroids, does your center address ways to eradicate that, prevent that? And is there ever a case where you feel like myomectomies are probably necessary when there are larger fibroids?
Yeah, regarding uterine fibroids, although there are certain ways to help regularize the cycle that we can do through a lot of natural things, including light therapy. By the way, blue light therapy, an hour of blue light will help women significantly by improving their luteinizing hormone in their brain, which actually helps their whole reproductive and hormonal system. But we don't know of anything that can eliminate fibroids other than removing them. And so most of the time people don't necessarily need them removed. It's not, a necessity. Fibroids aren't going to necessarily kill you, but they can cause excessive bleeding, and they can cause some issues of pain and those sorts of issues. And so if you're having excessive bleeding and pain, you might want to just have the fibroids removed. All right, question up here. And then Jared is going to speak a little bit about what you're going to get if you come through this training. Yeah.
Dr. Nedley, do you believe in white coat syndrome?
White coat syndrome.
Is it false or it's true? Because I have a problem. When I check my blood pressure at home, much as I put my foot into a dental clinic or my doctor, my blood pressure just go up.
Yes.
And I try to check, and when I get home and I check it, it's back.
Yes.
I don't know what's wrong with me. And there's something, I ate it though, and there's something else, if I eat a little salt, it go normal. It is, I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking, I don't know. I just want some help with that. Because the last time I went, I always check my blood pressure and write it down. And when I go on to the doctor, and she saw it, and she said, oh, you don't have blood pressure, but your parents have it, and in your genes, and she gave me a pill to take, but a low dosage. I don't know. It's just confusing to me.
So yes, white coat syndrome, of course, is when the blood pressure is okay, and then you go into the doctor's office and it's not okay. It's one of the reasons why in my doctor's office I do not wear a white coat. I'll actually wear something like this. When we do 24-hour blood pressure monitoring, we have found out when it goes up in a doctor's office, it's also going up multiple times a day when there are just typical stresses. And so we don't ignore, we don't just say because the blood pressure is okay at home, it doesn't need to be treated. We don't want it to be high under any stressful condition. And so we take that seriously. Now, one of the reasons why white coat syndrome exists is due to the effects of anxiety on hypertension. Depression does not cause high blood pressure, anxiety does. And so we might want to find out what is the root of this. And if we can help the anxiety, that might help your blood pressure significantly as well. All right, so Jared.
Yes, Pastor Harris is an incredible individual. I'm learning more about him. And just to speak about this training, the price is normally $500. It includes the Depression the Way Out. It includes our workbook, which goes through the 8-week program. So you'll meet once a week for 8 weeks. There's a spiritual journal that goes along, a daily devotional that you can write your gratitude, and there's a devotion that aligns with the content that you're learning in the program. And then 2 additional books that are fantastic. One is more centered around cognitive behavioral therapy. That's SOS, Help for Emotions, and Telling Yourself the Truth, which is another spiritual book, but guiding through cognitive distortions and cognitive behavioral therapy. So 2 additional books there, as well as access to the depression and anxiety assessment test. So you'll be able to go through that and set your group up through that, and an online portal where you can get help, and you'll be able to access the video lectures. So there's 2 types of training. One is the associate director training. That's for the person who's going to be leading out. And then there's a facilitator training. That's to lead out in the group discussions. And so what we worked out is we're actually going to give you a 50% discount, which we pretty much never, I don't think we've ever actually done. But there was a little miscommunication on the price, so we're going to work with you guys. And then the church here is going to sponsor the 50% of that. So essentially a $500 training is going to be $125 to you. And for the facilitator training, it would be $67. Normally it's $250. So thank your Pastor Harris for being such a gracious individual and being able to cover part of that. But we really want you to be able to start a program here in this community. And so if you're interested, Jared will be leading out tomorrow morning. And please check in with us tonight if you're going to be there in the morning.
All right, we might have one more question. I saw someone with a mic, and then we'll dismiss you. And if you have any other individual questions, I'll be out at the table for a little bit. I thought I saw a man with a mic, but I don't see him now. So we will we'll go ahead and dismiss Pastor Harris. I don't know if he stepped out. He might have. Pastor Harris, do you want to close things up here?
Thank you so much.
Yes, God bless you.
Praise the Lord. All right, Dr. Nedley, we want to thank you for coming and spending the Sabbath with us.
Thank you.
And